cheers to Erica for having the best dance moves of any one of our speakers at 51 broadcast this month. Way to go in the background. My name is Jesse, everybody, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. If you're joining us for the first time, we are all about conservation, adventure, and science, and bringing them into classrooms through over 50 monthly live free interactive broadcasts. I know for many teachers, it's your first month back in the class with students in class, and welcome back. It is so nice to have you guys here, and it's been a really, really exciting month to kick off the school year. Thank you guys so much for joining us as we continue to showcase such amazing people and places around the globe. Now, today, we are going completely different from most of the programs in our month with one of my favorite speakers that we ever bring on our broadcast, Dr. Caden. So she is at SNOLAB, one of the most amazing physics laboratories, one of the most amazing laboratories of any kind in the world, right here in Ontario, in Sudbury, a few hours north of where I am. So I'm going to turn it over to her. She's going to blow your minds with all the cool stuff she gets to do, some of the amazing research, what it takes to do the work that she does, and how she got into this really, really unique and cool field. I cannot wait for your questions at the end, and thank you all so much for joining us. Dr. Caden, thanks so much for coming back with us this year, and take us away.
Hi, Jesse. It's good to see you and good to be back. So I am going to share a presentation that I have made very quickly. There we go, and play. So, like Jesse said, I am a scientist at SNOLAB, and so here are a few photographs of me actually doing science at SNOLAB. What is SNOLAB, a SNOLAB, you might ask? So SNOLAB is a deep underground facility here in Northern Ontario. I am up in Sudbury, which is this little purple pin in Northern Ontario right now. This is what it looks like in the winter, and luckily we're not like that quite yet in September. It's very pretty fall right now. But we're not just this pretty surface building. We are actually a deep underground facility in an active nickel mine. Creighton mine has been running for about over 100 years now. So if you go down the number 9 shaft and walk about 1.5 kilometers, you will get to the SNOLAB facility. So we are, I will actually show you a video, if I can, of our travels underground. If this is too loud, that might be better. So we travel with the miners going deep underground into our facility. Now we are deep underground to shield from these particles called cosmic rays that would make noise inside our detectors. And what are we detecting? Neutrinos and dark matter. But maybe I should just let the video go and show you because it gets pretty cool and it's easier. It's the best way that I can show you what the lab is like. So it takes 3.5 minutes to go the 2 kilometers straight down. And we have to get all up in the same safety gear that the miners do. High-vis coveralls, steel toe and metatarsal boots, hard hats, everything. But the lab itself is a clean room, so we have to shower and completely change all of our clothing. Our detectors are made of crazy stuff, and it's a super, super clean environment. You have to take a shower once you get through the mine. So this is data in our detectors. The little lights, the little colored dots. We have lots of people, over 150 people work at SNOLAB from all over the world too. So there's one other quick video, and then I'll show you some more pictures, but this kind of explains why we go deep underground to study what we do. So this is a picture kind of of the sky, and you can see here it's night because it's dark and you can see the skies, but the cosmic rays coming down hit in the atmosphere and make a whole bunch of other particles. So if you go down the elevator, the shaft as we call it, deep down inside the Earth, there's fewer and fewer of those particles interacting. So if we're lucky, one of those particles is a neutrino and hits, or a piece of dark matter, and hits our detector and creates light. And those are the signals we see. So that's the experiments. What we're looking for is basically little bits of light. So this is a depiction of the underground facility, and it is full of experiments. Current experiments running and collecting data, future experiments that will be built here, services that the lab provides. And it's maybe difficult to see from this picture, and maybe you could kind of see from the first video, but it's about the size of a shopping mall. It is a huge, huge series of tunnels and caverns that hold all of these experiments. So that's the science side of it. But I think one of the cool things about the besides just the science is the facility itself. So without dwelling now too much, we have the deepest underground flush toilets in the world, and we have 4 of them. So it's one of the aspects of the lab that make it actually quite pleasant to work there, is there aren't porta potties or the like. We have flush toilets. When you go deep underground, their pressure increases. So it's like when you go up in an airplane and the pressure is decreased and you have to repressurize the air cabin. But we don't repressurize underground because it's still kind of all open. So if you have a sealed can of Pringles potato chips, like George Karunas brought down once when he came to visit the lab, the increased pressure will crush the chips. So, which is really cool to show, but it also, you have to account for that extra pressure when you're building all of our extra sensitive devices. So again, the particles that we search for are neutrinos and dark matter, and these are little plushies of them. But the cool thing about everything about the lab is cool, really. I could just go on and on and on and talking about it. The detectors that we have detect neutrinos and dark matter when they hit into our detectors and produce tiny amounts of generally light. So then all of our little light detectors, which is what each of these little dots are, light up, and we can tell by the pattern of light and by how much of light they see what particle hit. So again, I can talk more about the science if you'd like, or more about the facility, more about being a scientist, working up here in SNOLAB in Sudbury. But the pictures themselves, the detectors are so cool looking. So here I just wanted to show a little piece of all of the experiments that are running now, all of the big ones. So to kind of see, there's a lot of copper. There is a lot of water. So all of this blue here is water. There's normally water surrounding all of the detectors too. There is a lot of engineering, mind power that goes into all of these. Lots of cables, lots of computing power that goes into these experiments. So it's not just, again, the scientists and the engineers that get to go underground. A long time ago, Joe and George and Jesse all got to come underground and visit. And so hopefully at some point they can come again. And hopefully you guys can come and visit me at work someday too. But until then, it's pretty cool that I get to talk to you like this. So I can't wait to answer any of your questions about the facility. But you can always find more at SNOLAB Science.
Yes, well, fantastic, Dr. Caden. If you want to come out of screen share, you can see us again, have a bit of a conversation. I do want to dive into the experiments just a little bit, and I want to note too, for anyone at home, if you guys want to check it out, SNOLAB has an amazing website. I'll be bringing that up throughout the broadcast, linking to their social media pages. There's so much going on. There are so many amazing researchers like Dr. Caden that highlight their work so widely, and we're going to be doing other programs, special programs coming up in late October as well, so stay tuned for those. Plus, like a whole bevy. I think we've done, what, 10, 15 programs together at this point, so if you want to find out more about some epic research, or see both George and I's George and Joe are I's live program in the lab. We'd love to have you check that out on our YouTube channel. So specifically, we're talking a little bit about neutrinos and dark matter, and I know we've got audiences everywhere from like 10 through 15 today, and I do apologize for the epic construction happening the floor above me. You can't control video broadcast. Tell us a little bit about what that looks like. So on a day-by-day basis, when you go into work, you've gone down into the lab, what are you actually doing? Are you studying things at a computer? Are you checking numbers? Are you helping set up the experiments? What does that look like?
So as a normal day going underground might be, say, going to calibrate our detector. So this would be putting in a radioactive source that is very low radioactivity, wouldn't hurt us, but will produce enough particles or enough light so that we can understand how the detector works. So, or we know how our detectors work, but exactly to map how much light is produced by a particle of certain energy. So that could be something that we go underground to do. So you would have this whole system of putting the source inside your detector, again, being even cleaner than you are just to walk around the detector, extra layers of gloves, extra layers of masks. We wear masks now too, because everyone is COVID safe. And then looking at that data when it comes out. So it's actually kind of interesting to just look at the data from the experiment, either the calibration data specifically or normal physics data. You don't need to be underground. You can do it all remotely from our laptops. I'm in the office today, but you can do it from home. So it has been very interesting transitioning to this new world. Another thing that you might be doing underground, if your experiment isn't already running, is building your project. So the size of the experiments that I work on, again, maybe it wasn't very clear from the pictures, but they are huge. So one detector can take up an entire cavern, which is like 30 meters tall by 20 meters wide, like massive, hollowed out volumes in the rock. So you could be building your experiment, which is any number of steps. They often are shielded in giant tanks, and then you have to build all of the different layers and do all of that in a clean environment, depending on what kind of detector you have, what it's made out of. And that's just the science side. So to run a facility like SNOLAB, you also have all of the engineering and integration staff to put things together. There are process plant operators to fill the detectors with water and any other detection fluids. There are like electricians to do things, and IT crew and cleaners. The largest fraction of staff at SNOLAB is the cleaning staff. So we are a clean lab. This is it is not an adjective, it is a verb. We are actively cleaning every single piece of equipment that comes into the lab, because the dirt on it can screw up, just from walking through the mine, can kind of screw up our signal. So everything has to be clean.
So this is what I wanted to harp on for a second. So what happens? You have this device, this gigantic machine that's 30 meters by 20 meters. It's incredible. It's detecting these particles. It gets a bunch of dirt in it. Does it destroy it? Does it render it useless for a long period of time? Like, what's the cost associated with that? If you guys don't clean and something goes wrong, is there an example of this happening?
So if you, so it depends on what stage of the experiment that this happens in. You can maybe take a pause if you're not like actively running and clean up that spot. You might notice later on that there is a hot spot in your detector, and you can probably think that someone put their handprint there and didn't clean it off, because our skin, we have potassium in our bodies, a mineral that we need to live, but it comes out in our sweat, and potassium is a background for our experiments. So when we touch anything in our experiments, we have to wear gloves. And if maybe your glove doesn't come all the way up the side of your arm, and your skin brushes against, little bits of sweat or little bits of skin will create a background. So you might just ignore data from that one area of the detector. You may have to try to use the detector itself to clean itself off. So if you have a liquid, you can recirculate this liquid, put it through different filters, and then put it back in. And by continuously doing that, depending on how big the detector is, how long that takes, that can clean itself up.
Okay. October, we're starting off Space Month pretty soon. We're going to be doing like 20, 30 broadcasts featuring astronomers, engineers, all sorts of amazing people around the world. And one of the things we often talk about in those programs is how sensitive their telescopes are, how sensitive these devices. The idea that you could like see a lighter flick on the moon sort of thing with the telescopes that they have. Is there any sort of analogous comparison to the sort of work that you do? Like how needle in a haystack are we looking? How able are these machines to detect, I guess, the most trace of particles or activities happening?
Yeah, so the light sensors that we use, that we cover our detector with, they work kind of like reverse flashlights. How a flashlight, you put in a battery and you flick a switch and light comes out. So for us, you put in a battery, light goes in, and then a signal comes out the other side. So they detect light and create electrons from it. And they are so sensitive that they are 2 kilometers underground in a very dark environment. But if you were to put them on the surface and you lit a candle on the moon and everything else was dark, you could see the candle. They could detect single photons. Lighting a candle on the moon, they could detect. They're incredibly, incredibly sensitive. And these are even old technology. Newer versions of this technology, of these light sensors, are even more sensitive. But I love that you brought up October, because again, it's just a few days away. And for us, October is dark matter month. So dark matter is, we like to call it the invisible space glue that holds the universe together. And it could be much more than that, but it is what holds galaxy clusters together and what holds our own galaxies together. We know this from studying the way the galaxies spin and studying the way galaxy clusters spin. We can see that light is bent when it goes around dark matter. We don't quite know what dark matter is yet. We know what it's not. It's not neutrinos. And it's not any other normal kind of matter, because we see those interactions in different ways. And we don't see dark matter the same way. We don't know what it is yet. And that's one of the things that gets us up in the morning, the idea that we could discover it, that we have ruled out so much of what it could be, that there's very few places left for it to be hiding. So either we can build bigger detectors, better detectors, and cover that last area of a known parameter space, or maybe our whole thinking is wrong and there's new ideas that we haven't thought of yet. And that's what dark matter is. It's so exciting. And that's what October is for particle physicists.
We should all be as enthusiastic about something in our lives as you are about dark matter. But I mean, it's fascinating. The fact that we don't know what makes up a fundamental large amount of the universe, not like some tiny amount, but more than there is observable matter. So everything that we see, all the stars, all the planets, all of that, make up a smaller fraction of the universe, 5%. Then all the dark matter we see, dark energy, which is even more. It's a fantastic cosmos out there. And so I'm curious, are you guys the only lab in the world doing this? Are there only a few? Where are they? And do you get the chance to work with people around the globe on solving these sort of problems?
Yes. So SNOLAB is in Northern Ontario, where we are the underground lab for Canada. There's another accelerator lab in Triumph, and a few other facilities, but we are the underground lab for Canada. We're the deepest, cleanest lab in the world. There's one lab that is a little bit deeper than us, but they are under a mountain instead of strict underground, and they don't operate the entire facility as a clean lab. So there are other underground labs. There is one in South Dakota, SURF. There's one in France. There's one in Spain. There's a new one being built in Australia. There's a big one in China. There's one in Japan. I think there's a new one in Mexico too. So there's a few locations all over the world, but we're all doing neutrino and dark matter physics. And we do work together. Oh, there's one in England too, Boldy. So we work together in testing materials for each other's projects, kind of collaborating on some projects. So there's a dark matter detector that had been in England, and now they've kind of combined forces with one that was in the US, and now they're building a new, bigger one that's actually running now in the States. So it's relatively such a small community that we all do kind of have to work together, which is great to have all these big groups. And yeah, even on each of the projects here at SNOLAB, we have between 50 and 200 people working on each project. And those are people from all over Canada, all over the world. We have over 850 scientists working on projects at SNOLAB. around the world.
This is one of the things that, like in virtually all our programs, people really highlight as being a central element of the scientific experience is this idea to be able to work with people around the globe, some of the most amazing, creative, intelligent people everywhere. One last question for me before we go into the live groups. I apologize for the jackhammer. How long does it take to get to be in a job like yours? I mean, you're so enthusiastic about this. For our students in grade 6 and grade 9 today, what would they have to do to end up in a role like yours and try and make it as unalarming as possible?
So I studied, in general, science in high school, and then I went in to keep studying physics in undergrad. I didn't go to a big school, a small state school in New Jersey, and from there went on to graduate school at Drexel University. I have found a mug, Drexel in Philadelphia. And so I spent 8 years in grad school, so that's master's and PhD, which is a little bit long, but really not comparably much longer than average, especially not for particle astrophysics. And then I came to Laurentian University to do a postdoc, which is kind of your first job after you finish your PhD, when you can expand your research horizon a little bit. And then I became a research scientist here at SNOLAB. So it takes a bit of a commitment to a long term of schooling, but it's not just sitting in class the whole time. So in undergrad, you're doing different lab work, and you maybe some small summer research projects with different professors. And then in graduate school, you're really only taking classes for a few years, and then you're really deep diving into your research. It is a commitment, but if you can really find the a research project that you love or a group that you love working with, it doesn't feel like forever. And you're generally employed by your graduate university as well. So it's not like you're living in debt for all of these years either, which I know can be a big concern if all of your friends got jobs and you're just keep plugging away at school.
But again, like the thing is here that once you go through this process, you end up pretty young by the end of it, and you end up with a really fantastic job getting to work with all sorts of amazing people, usually being paid a lot of money in a lot of cases for high-end research scientists. And I think that's something that's worth noting. So it does take a lot of work, but there are a lot of huge benefits that you can have following the sort of route that you did. Dr. Caden, this is great. I want to keep myself off camera as much as possible, and I want to turn it over to Mr. Rodriguez's class. They're grade 9 is joining us in Ottawa today. So if you guys want to come in and kick us off with a question for Dr. Caden, go for it. Hi, guys.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi.
Say hi, guys.
Hi.
Does anybody have questions first? I have a few, but maybe you guys have one. Curiosities, maybe you weren't paying attention, so you could ask a question that was already said. No?
And no worries if not. I know grade 9 classes, you guys are usually a little reluctant to ask questions, so I can come back in a minute. And Mr. Rodriguez,
I had a question, but sorry, to interrupt.
That's totally fine.
Yeah, so I was wondering, what are your applications or maybe your future with the research that you're doing? What does it apply to anything in any fields or in technologies that we're looking at or in the future per se?
Yeah, so that's a great question, especially because it's not one that we always worry ourselves about. We do basic research, which is really understanding the fundamentals, but a lot of our research involves developing technologies that are then used. So like some of the light sensors that we use have now gone on for like PET scanners, specifically neutrino research, and has applications in nuclear security and in kind of understanding. We can understand very well the flux or how much nuclear fuel is being used and the rate at nuclear fuel being used. So perhaps at some point we can support so nuclear energy being a good thing, support that in countries where we might not, where we don't want nuclear weapons to proliferate. So that's one use, but also, I mean, particle physicists kind of invented the internet. So I think that ended up being more useful than anyone ever realized, in that this is how we're talking today too. There are different pressure systems that we have been able to kind of use and develop and turn that knowledge into developing a ventilator system that is now being produced and used in hospitals, because a lot of our expertise in creating these experiments has been in gas and fluid pressure handling. So we have expertise in that area. And we don't know what the next use of some of our technologies are going to be. I mean, electricity at the beginning was like parlor tricks and making frogs' legs dance. So, and now, again, electricity and the internet are everywhere. So I'm looking forward to the next generation of scientists, to you guys thinking of new ideas for the stuff that we're coming up with.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite questions in all of science, so thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, for that. A couple of weeks ago, we had a scientist on talking about CRISPR, and I love CRISPR. It's like the ultimate modern-day story of this. It started off as a journey into the bacterial immune system. What could be more niche than finding out how bacteria fight off infections? And now we have the most powerful genetic tool in human history to possibly reshape the entire world, our minds, our bodies, agriculture, bring back species from the brink. I mean, there's so much that can happen because we're finding out how bacteria fight off their versions of colds. And it's amazing. So again, one thing you'll notice in a lot of debates about science is, should we invest in basic research? Should we put money into just science for its own sake? And the answer is a resounding yes, both for the science that we want to find through that effort, and for the unexpected benefits of all these amazing things that we can come to discover from it. So thank you for that question, and thanks, Dr. Caden, for that great answer. Mrs. H's class, Annapolis, Royal, and Nova Scotia, if you guys want to come on in, I know your camera's off, but if you're there on audio, if I can hear you, come on in for a question.
Okay. So I was reading livescience.com, and the question that I want to know the answer to is, does dark matter, does it exist in every galaxy or just one?
Yeah, we think it exists in every galaxy. We're not sure yet. Again, it's really hard to detect in the ways that we have detection methods for, but we think the way that we can detect it, or that we infer that it's there, is by looking at how fast the stars on the outside of the galaxies are spinning, because they should be spinning more slowly, but they're still spinning really fast. So we think that it's pretty much everywhere, and that as we spin around the sun in a year, that half the time we're going kind of with the dark matter, and the other half the time we're going against the dark matter. So we're hoping to use eventually that going with it versus going against it to look for our data and try and find some annual variation to see if we can see when we're bumping into it more than if we're traveling with it. But we think it's everywhere, pervasive. That's a great question.
Going into Space Month, this is a question we get a lot. As far as we can understand, the physical processes that develop planets, that make stars, that do everything that we see in our observable universe close to us, exist everywhere else. There's no reason that we have to suggest that, hey, we have planets in our other solar systems here, but maybe not somewhere else. We think that it's pretty similar. There's some nuance to that, of course, but as a general rule, the universe is pretty, standard, so to speak, is what one of our big findings is. Great question, guys. Miss Ballard's class, now you guys have two devices on, which means you might get a little bit of an echo, but at Lambeth Public School, if you want to unmute your main computer and come on in and see if we can take a question, go for it. Hi, guys. Nope, so we're going to have that big echo. You have a second device on. Whatever the second device is, I don't know what it is, if it's another computer or a phone or what have you, but as long as you have that, we won't be able to hear you, unfortunately. So good luck. I'll try it. I don't know if your other device is something else, but I'm going to get rid of it, and then we'll come to you and see if we can take your question. How about now? Yep, you're good to go.
Which one? Laptop? Yeah.
Yep, Miss Ballard, you're good. We can hear you guys now. Oh.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, sorry about this.
That's
I didn't
okay.
realize that the speaker is not working on the computer. I have a student here who has a question, and the question is,
what about if your Pringles can's empty? What happens if there's nothing in it?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that a bit?
the question is, you talked about taking the Pringle chips can. What happens if you take the can empty?
Oh, okay. So if you take the can, so the Pringles chip compressed really well because it was very well sealed. So the pop top and then the film that you have to pull off, it had been unopened. So if you took the can empty and you made sure that the lid was on really tight, yep, it would still compress. And another interesting kind of fun things to try is if you take a balloon underground and you blow it up a little bit and tie the knot in it. When you come to surface, the balloon will be more blown up because there's less pressure. So the air that you've put in will expand even more when you bring the balloon up to surface. It's really fun visual to show. Or if you didn't open the Pringles can, when you came back to surface, again, that's 2 kilometers up, it would be normal, perfectly round again.
A lot of deep sea expeditions do this too. They'll take something on the outside of the submersible and they'll take it down and watch it get absolutely crushed. Although my favorite, product placement of all time, when James Cameron, the director of Avatar and Titanic, took his submersible to the bottom of the ocean, they had a Rolex strapped to one of the arms that picked things up, and it showed that it kept ticking even at the bottom of the ocean, which was amazing. I've got to give it them. That was very cool. So not the same effect as you get with that Pringles can or everything we've been chatting about. Cool question, guys. All right, Mr. Rodriguez's class, we're going to come back to you, and then Mrs. H's class, we'll wrap up from there. Come on in again, guys.
Come. Yeah, we have a question. Jacob, come. Go for it. You got this. Just speak to the.
How does depression not break any?
How does the pressure not break the
instruments that you guys use?
Perfect.
Yeah. So we have to specially design them to withstand the pressure. So whenever we are designing things and looking for parts and calling for quotes and things, it's one of the specifications that we put that it has to withstand the 25% higher pressure. So that is in either the manufacturers will take care of that or our engineers will take care of that when designing things.
Very cool.
And you have to clear your ears, kind of like blow, like if you're scuba diving and you're going up in an airplane the whole time going down. If you have a cold, if somehow like your sinuses are clogged and you can't clear your ears, you shouldn't go to work that day because it could be very dangerous.
We have a lot of divers come on the program, and this is one of the big things they teach you. Like first day of diving, if you become a scuba diver, you cannot go with a cold. Like it's actually quite dangerous for you. It can be very, top divers in the world do not go, even if they're set to go on an expedition, if they have a cold. I guess maybe not necessarily as lethal as it could be at SNOLAB, but something to really consider. So I'm glad we've never got the pressure question before for instruments. I like that one. Thanks, guys. H's class, come on back in Nova Scotia and wrap us up with one more question. Hi, guys.
Do you have a question?
Wait, do you have a question? Does dark matter actually? Go ask something.
Thinking about it. I know it's high school. I know it's tough to ask questions.
They're all thinking, okay, Logan, come on. They're coming. Give us a second.
No worries.
Is there such thing as dark matter bombs in our future?
Just go ask. I don't know. I mean,
Why am I getting it?
Is there going to be such a thing as dark matter bombs in the future, or once we further understand them?
I can't really imagine a dark matter bomb. I think it would be difficult to gather so much in one place, and also I'm not sure what its effect would be.
Okay, I've got a counter to this because dark matter is something that we're still the barest sense of understanding, and it's used in weapons. Antimatter is something that we brought up in some of your programs before. Could you explain a little bit about that? But certainly, there's a lot of sci-fi around antimatter weapons. So if we're diving down the rabbit hole here, what's the possibility? Is it something that you'd want to take part in personally, Dr. Caden, the antimatter bomb creation, or is it possible, or what's the deal?
The antimatter bomb creation is kind of against my own personal philosophies, but I kind of also calling back to the previous question about what uses there are for these things. Neutrinos travel through everything. They're not stopped by almost anything. They don't interact via the ways that that light interacts or that other matter interacts. They just travel through things. So right now we bounce our like satellite phone calls around a series of satellites around the Earth. If we could somehow use, instead of sending them through electromagnetic waves on satellites, if we could encode things through neutrinos, they could just travel straight through the Earth. And then we could just have tiny neutrino detectors instead of satellite receivers. I'm not sure how we would ever make that work, but there has been an experiment that sent like pulse neutrino beam, and at the detector, they were able to decode the pulses and read a message. So maybe.
For any student that's like really into sci-fi, it's one of the more advanced ones I've ever read, but the three-body problem talked about this, where you're using like advanced particle physics to encode messages and send them across the galaxy. And it was a really neat book, certainly very, very cutting-edge stuff, but a fantastic illustration of that principle. Dr. Caden, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, if people want to check out more about your work, more about what SNOLAB does, snolab.ca, at SNOLAB Science. There's so much there. For the classes that want to dive in deeper in the science, some of our past programs have dove into some of those experiments in particular. So if you want to check those out, everything's on our YouTube channel forever, free for you guys to peruse. So I encourage you to do so. And come back in October. We're going to do another program on dark matter specifically and dive in. So if you want to join us for Dark Matter Month, I'm very excited to dive in. And yeah, it should be a good time. Dr. Caden, is there one last message you want to leave our kids with today about your work, about how they can get involved in sort of cutting edge science like this? What do we want to wrap the broadcast with?
So I think one of the most important things that I didn't get as a message enough when I was young is that you're a scientist too, that you have all the inquisitive nature, all of the tools to be able to do this also. So I hope that you can look at scientists and see someone who looks like you, or maybe be someone that someone else would look up to in the future.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us as always. Mr. Rodriguez, Mrs. H class, Miss Ballas class, thank you guys for joining us. And what we'll do is bring you guys in to say a quick farewell with me. Have a wonderful rest of the day.